Hey y'all, I'm starting this reading vlog on a whim, and I've also tried to start it about 4 times now because I just started reading Snow Crash for class. Like, I'm 10 pages in. I started it this morning, and I can tell I really need to talk about it because it is a deeply weird book immediately, like right off the bat. It is deeply weird, and I feel like I need to talk about it, but I keep getting tongue-tied trying to figure out even where to start with this. But this is a book I'm reading for a class I'm TIing for, which is a teaching internship. I don't remember exactly what it's called. It's a TI. I'm doing that for this class. It's on environmental justice in literature and video games. So we're reading Snow Crash for like the latter half of the class. I just wasn't sure what to expect going into this, and 10 pages in, I'm already like, this is one of the weirdest books I've read. Just in the way that it describes things and like the world that it is setting up. But this is basically a science fiction book from like the early 90s that was, I think, one of the earlier books that kind of kicked off the cyberpunk genre. But this one is following this guy named Hero Protagonist, who in the real world is a pizza delivery guy, and in the metaverse, online metaverse world, he is a warrior prince and he wields samurai swords. And it's following Hero Protagonist as he gets involved in a situation where there is like a computer virus that's taking out hackers, and there's also some sort of shadowy villain who is quote unquote threatening to bring about the infocalypse. Anyway, it feels like a pretty generic description to me, although I suspect this was probably like pretty different when it was first published. I'm 10 pages in and I just don't know how to feel about it. Because line 1, we are introduced to the kind of world building this is going to have, which is what I call capitalized noun world building, where it just gives you a capitalized noun and expects you to figure out what it means. The best example I can think of for this, of something else that does this, is Jupiter Ascending, where they're just like saying words that sound important, but they never tell you what those mean. It's that kind of world building. And then within 10 pages, I've already been introduced to the pizza mafia. Like in this is like future America, but like a 90s version of future America, where like corporations run everything. That's, you know, not that far off. But also the mafia runs pizza. Pizza chains don't exist anymore. The mafia runs pizza. And if your delivery comes in longer than 30 minutes, if it takes longer than 30 minutes for your deliverator to deliver your pizza, a mafia boss shows up on your lawn to apologize to you and like trick you into signing a bunch of papers to be like the new face of the pizza mafia, like public figure. And also presumably your deliverator is summarily executed for failing to deliver the pizza in time. And I am 10 pages in and I just genuinely don't know what to make of this so far. So this is just super weird, and we're gonna experience it together as I'm reading it for class. I'm gonna probably try and check in after each section that I need to read, but obviously if something super weird happens, I'll check in more frequently than that. But I'm just gonna go ahead and read this whole thing right now because I do need some time to think about like the discussion stuff that I gotta lead in like the 3rd week that we're talking about this. But yeah, it's so deeply weird. I keep trying to start this vlog and just not knowing where to start. So I suppose the best place to start is Pizza Mafia, and we will go from there. Shoulder cat moment. I just needed to include this because he's cute. Honestly, it's really one of my vlogs, though, if there isn't a pumpkin moment, at least somewhere in there. Well, it's been several days, and I am now back to reading Snow Crash. I had to spend some time working on a midterm project. I'm still finishing that, but I'm much closer to being done, and now I am setting aside the next 2 days, tonight and tomorrow, really, to finish Snow Crash, which is going to be a bit of an undertaking. I am on page 54, 55, so I'm still very early in. I've got about 500 pages left, and I'm really not sure how I'm feeling about this, but I have read the first section that we're going to be talking about in class. So we're talking about the first 5 chapters, and that section is going to have the topic of corporations and environmentalism. So I'm curious to see what the discussion is going to be like here, but this is just such a weird book. I think that there's almost like too much emphasis on the science, and I did learn today about the authors that he has background in, was it geography, physics, and computer science. So there's a lot of like descriptions of those things. So there's a lot of description here. There's also like a whole section talking about like the importance of 2 to the power of whatever for computer programming, which I found really boring. The other bits are like really weird because I think Hiro, the main character, is really like weirdly aggressive in his own head. That first section, I was like, I'm not sure if it's in his head or if this is gonna be the tone of the whole book. It seems like it's kind of sort of the tone of the whole book, but like amped up when we're actually following Hiro directly. But there's other sections where it's like we're looking at him from a more kind of zoomed out perspective, and we're getting more of an overview of his life and what he's doing. And then there's also another character, YT, that we've just met, who is a courier. So she's the person with the weird skateboard wheels. So we got YT as well. And I like her better than Hiro at this point. I don't know how to feel about him yet. He's just very aggressive in a way that I think is, it makes him read like he's a young teenage boy. And he's just kind of like hyper aggressive, and he has this like obsession with his samurai swords that he carries. And it feels very like late middle school, early high school boy to me. But he's apparently in his 20s, it sounds like. It sounds like he's definitely an adult. Possibly mid to late 20s. I don't know, he feels like a very YA protagonist to me, but he's clearly not. And I just don't know how to feel about him. But he's a hacker, so we're getting some interesting stuff with like his involvement with the metaverse in its kind of early days and why he's involved there, and some of the things that he has created within the metaverse and why they're important. So we're getting some stuff there, but so far not very much has happened. I'm not entirely sure why any of what's happened so far has been important. We have gotten the first mention of Snow Crash in the book. Somebody approaches Hiro and asks him if he would like to try some Snow Crash, which is apparently a computer term that I'd never heard of before, but it's apparently like a virus completely knocks out a computer system by affecting the part of the computer that projects stuff onto the monitor. Something along those lines. I didn't totally understand or take it in, possibly because I don't care. But we've gotten the first kind of mention of Snow Crash, and I didn't love the guy that mentions it to Hiro is kind of a weird dude, stands out in a crowd, and Hiro then casually refers to him as a paranoid schizophrenic. I really don't like that. That annoys me. It pisses me off when stuff perpetuates like mental health stigma, so I really didn't like that. In fact, I think I just wrote, like, I put a little emoji next to it, or emoticon, I guess, not an emoji, but like, drew a little guy in there. Yeah. This is just such a weird book to talk about because, like, not very much has happened yet, even though I'm 50 pages in of a 550 page book. I'm like, something should be happening to draw me in, and it's not. Hiro goes to deliver a pizza. The pizza delivery goes wrong. YT, the courier, is involved in the situation with the pizza going wrong, and then gets involved with the pizza delivery. And I can't tell yet why that's important, but that's like the first 3 chapters of the book. And then we get a little bit about Hiro outside of his job as a pizza deliveryman and his like role as a hacker. And we learn a bit about the metaverse. There was like a very long description of this place in the metaverse called The Street. And it's like just incredibly long. I just remember this was being a spoiler vlog. Why am I avoiding spoilers? Anyway, YT causes Hiro to fuck up the pizza delivery, and then she offers to finish the delivery herself and manages to get it there before the 30 minutes are up. So there was like 30 seconds remaining or something. So she's now like, well, the mafia owes me a favor because I got this pizza delivered that was expected to be late. Now they've just like, they've avoided a lawsuit because this pizza arrived on time. So YT's got that going on. Not really sure what she's doing yet or why she's here, but she's a courier and apparently she's important. Hiro was involved in the early days of the metaverse, we find out, because he and some of his hacker friends got in on it like very early and bought space on this thing called The Street, which is on like a planet-like thing that is far larger than the Earth. And there's just like The Street, which is all advertisements and businesses and things in the metaverse. And he has a house that he and his friends built, like a little neighborhood in the metaverse of hackers. And they also built something called the Black Sun, which I just now learned about. And they are in some way very important. Like the Black Sun is this big draw on the street. There's just people crowding around it, and apparently there's only like a handful of people that can actually get into the building. So it's just, there's been a lot of information thrown at me, but I'm not sure how any of it's relevant at this point or like what's actually going on. The first hint of a plot we've gotten has been this bit. One is YT going, I think the mafia owes me now, and then this guy who comes up to Hiro and is like, do you want to try some Snow Crash? So like that's everything that's happened in the first 50 pages. and I really don't know what to expect from this or where it's going to go. So it's like I'm curious to find out, but I'm finding the actual like scenes quite boring in a lot of ways because it's so much like description and explanation of the science. So definitely not my kind of sci-fi, but I'm gonna carry on because I need to have this read for class on Monday. It's currently Wednesday, forgot what day it was. So my plan was to read this today and tomorrow and hopefully have this done within those 2 days, because then I'm going to swap back and finish my midterm project. So finish the second section, and I have to say I really don't understand yet what's going on still. I'm at page 106, so I just passed the 100-page mark, and this book is a little bit weird in its structure. I think there's kind of 2 timelines going on, but I'm not entirely clear on how they relate to each other. There is like this kind of linear timeline that seems to be happening following Hero as he like fails at that pizza delivery, meets YT, she does the delivery for him, and then we're kind of like leading on from that. But then there's this other timeline that, as far as I can tell, is maybe a few weeks later. There's a mention in one scene that it's like been a couple of weeks since he lost the delivery job. But there's this like other timeline a few weeks later where Hero is like, actually he's really not doing much. We get a chapter where it's just like long exposition on this place in the metaverse called the Street, which seems to be like the main thoroughfare of the metaverse, and everything is kind of built on the street. So we get like a long chapter of that, and the only action in that chapter is Hero crossing the street, encountering a kind of weird guy who offers him Snow Crash, and this is the first mention we get of that, and then going into the Black Sun, which is a bar that he and his friend David, who used to work together but no longer work together, created very early on in the metaverse. We get like that scene, then we get another long chapter of exposition on Hero's history with a woman named Juanita, who we find out was the person who created the technology that allows the metaverse to model faces really well, so you can like read emotion on people's faces in the metaverse. So she's like super important to the creation of the metaverse. She was briefly married to David. She was previously in a relationship with Hero, and now she is like no longer working for the Black Sun. And she is, because the Black Sun, the bar was created by Black Sun Incorporated, which is like a computer software firm. And so she no longer works with them, and she is off doing something else. I think we were told she's trying to open her own branch of the Catholic Church. So that's an interesting point. She's religious. And she approaches Hero while she's in the bar, and again, this is one where we get like a bunch of build-up on like why she's important or how she's like related to Hero's backstory. And then she approaches him and is like, hey, don't mess with Snow Crash, stay away from somebody named Raven, and I know this person named Lagos that I want you to meet. And then she leaves, and she hands him a card that says like Babel parentheses Infocalypse and nothing else. And then we get a bit where David has the Snow Crash sample. He did accept one, and it says like tear here to try Snow Crash, and there's this like very weird moment where he tears it. There's like a weird little interaction with a like avatar that appears as a result, and then shortly thereafter David's computer crashes and he gets kicked out of his own bar. So that all happens, and then Hero gets into a sword fight inexplicably. I don't know what the point of this is. There's like a Japanese businessman there who thinks that Hero must have come by his own swords through some unhonorable interaction, that he's like taken them from somebody or something like that, and Hero actually inherited them from his father, who won them in a duel in Japan during World War II. And he gets into a sword fight with this guy, and the guy is like super weird about the whole thing, but then Hero wins the sword fight, and we get this whole thing about how Hero is the greatest swordsman because he's like won every fight he's ever had in the Black Sun, and there have been like 890 sword fights in the Black Sun. And so that's a whole thing, and I'm not sure, other than like introducing the concept of Snow Crash and this name Raven and Lagos, I'm not really sure what the whole point of that storyline is. Like, that seems to be like the main plot line. It's where we're getting the information, but very little is happening there. And then we have this like kind of action-packed sequence, because after YT delivers the pizza, she gets arrested for having taken the pizza away from a crime scene. And Hero presumably like fights his way out because he doesn't get arrested. But she gets arrested and gets locked up, and then she calls a couple of people looking for some help getting out, and then eventually calls Hiro because he gave her his like business card, and she calls him and asks for help, and he shows up to help her escape. He doesn't really do very much. He just kind of is there, and she does all of the escaping on her own, and then they go to a Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong area. It's like a franchise. Everything is franchises now, and they pull into there because he is for some reason a citizen of Greater Hong Kong, and they're escaping because he's just, you know, broken her out of, well, technically she's broken herself out of jail, and he was there. He was present when it happened, and they're now being chased by the manager and like a bunch of other guys. There's just like a lot of, I just want to point out, a lot of casual racism in here. Not really loving that. There's like a lot of it, and it's really grating on me at this point, 100 pages in, how much of it there is, particularly in YT's perspective, so that's uncomfortable. Also found out that Hiro is 30, would not have guessed he was that old because he does not come across as 30, and YT is 15, and she does come across as mostly kind of 15. Or maybe a little older. I thought she was maybe like 17 or so, but she apparently is like 15. And that's pretty much everything that's happened. And again, I don't understand, other than like, it's the way that YT and Hiro met. I don't understand the purpose of the like failed pizza delivery storyline. And then the other storyline, which appears to be the kind of main plot line, I'm guessing anyway, has almost nothing happening in it. Like, the most interesting thing that's happened so far is David having the like big system crash and getting kicked out of his own bar. Like, that's the only thing that's happened that feels like it's relevant to the plot. Like that and the conversation with Juanita. So I genuinely don't know what to expect going into the rest of this book, because I'm like 100 pages in, and it's like so many things have happened, and yet so little has happened to push the story forward. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm not really having a great time, but it is an easy read, so it's not like a bad reading experience. It's just, I'm kind of bored. My camera seems to be having some problems with focusing, so bear with me. I hope it's gonna stay focused. I'm gonna try and stay close in so the light doesn't cause too many problems. But I have, one, just got my hair dyed pink. So this is the first time I'm seeing it on camera, and I really like how bright it is. But two, I've also finished part 3 of Snow Crash, and this is the section that I'm gonna be leading discussion for. We get like several new events in here, and I feel like this is where the plot is really starting to kick off. I'm a little up past the 200 page mark, and I feel like it's taken way too long for the plot to get interesting, given how long this book is. There's a lot of fat that could be cut out of this book, for sure. But finally getting to the plot, and we have kind of two major things happen. One of them is that we finally start to find out a little bit more about Lagos and this person named Raven who's been mentioned, and then the other one is we start to get like the involvement of the mafia. So in that first piece, Hiro finally gets to look at the like library of information he's just gotten from Juanita. He starts to find out about a businessman named Elbob Rife who has a big like yacht. Is actually an aircraft carrier, but he calls it his yacht, that he's turned into something he calls the Raft, where all of these like refugees have kind of latched onto the yacht in hopes of like being dragged straight to America, rather than having to make a dangerous like ocean crossing on their own. And he refers to the raft as something that is bringing biomass into America and likens America to like the Minotaur at Crete. It's really creepy. So we get some more information on him, and he's just kind of like your standard spooky, definitely up to something billionaire. And then Hiro ends up going to a concert with his his roommate. His partner is YT, not like dating, but like business partner. And he goes with his roommate to a concert, which is his roommate's band, which is Vitally Chernobyl and the Meltdowns, and his roommate is Vitally Chernobyl, so he kind of has to be there. He's the frontman. So they go to this concert, and while they're there, Hiro is approached by a gargoyle, which is actually just a guy wearing a computer who's basically scanning everything around him all the time. He's approached by a gargoyle who turns out to be Lagos. And Lagos has this weird speech about like the ancient Mesopotamians and how they didn't differentiate between evil and disease. And so evil is a virus, and he should stay away from Raven. And that's kind of what we get from him, is this kind of connection to the ancient Mesopotamians, which for some reason are relevant to Lagos in some way. He never really offers any explanation. He just gives some cryptic warnings. And then Raven shows up to the concert. We see him for the first time. He's this like giant dude, and he's there just briefly, he has like a meeting with a local gang leader named T-Bone Murphy, and they have a little handoff. He gives him a briefcase, and then he starts to leave. And Hero kind of wanders off to go do his like patrolling around the crowd thing, looking for information that he can upload to the library so he can hopefully get paid for finding information. And as he's doing this, he gets a call from the head of the guards that he had hired to kind of keep the crowd safe. They're a group called the Enforcers, and their leader Squeaky calls him and is like, hey, your friend YT has had a bit of an incident with Raven. You need to come see this. And it turns out that Lagos has been killed. One of the things that's interesting here is that Lagos tells Hero to beware Raven's knives, that they can like cut through bulletproof gear like it's nothing. And Hero is like, that's really weird. And then he sees Raven get like metal detected and nothing goes off. So he's like, well, clearly Lagos was lying. He doesn't have any knives. But I'm pretty sure, and this hasn't been confirmed, but this is my guess, I'm pretty sure he's got obsidian knives, because obsidian can become very, very sharp, like splitting things on like an atomic level. And so I think he's got obsidian blades, and that would explain why that doesn't set off the metal detector. But anyway, they find Lagos and he has been cut open. And he was wearing a bunch of gear, but he's been cut completely open. And now YT has disappeared because she's chasing T-Bone Murphy, who is chasing Raven. And so they end up getting in a car and chasing that whole group and following like the carnage through the city. There's a bunch of people who've been injured as this whole like chase is happening. And they end up catching up with Raven just before he murders T-Bone Murphy. And he also is like throwing bamboo spears at people. But that happens, and one of the remaining gang members is following Raven, only to be like punched really hard in the face and goes flying. And then we find out from Squeaky that they aren't chasing Raven, they were chasing the gang, because the gang was chasing Raven and the Enforcers are actually protecting Raven. And so we're not sure why that is. We find out that he is dealing Snow Crash. He's dealing this drug. And the Enforcers are protecting him, and we get this information from Squeaky that they're protecting him because he's a sovereign, which we're not given any real explanation for that. It's like capital S, sovereign. I think it means he's the leader of one of the like nation corporations that have kind of cropped up. Like there's also like Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong, Nova Sicilia, a bunch of things like that. And so he's a sovereign. He seems to be an important guy. But then Squeaky adds, and this is the thing that I find so stupid that I really didn't like. Squeaky adds that Raven is a nuclear power. And what he means by that is Raven's sidecar on his motorcycle is an atomic bomb that he got from like an old Soviet submarine or something. And he has wired a node into his brain so that if he dies, the bomb goes off. So the Enforcers have been protecting Raven to prevent that bomb from going off. So I don't know why all of that is happening. I think that's very silly. I was more interested when I found out that the Enforcers were protecting him. I lost interest when we got this like elaborate explanation for why. So all of that happens. Set that aside. YT, on the other hand, after this incident, she shortly thereafter is asked to make a delivery. We're briefly introduced to a Nova Sicilia franchisee named Jason, who hires her to make a delivery because he's already gotten in trouble once for trying to make the delivery himself. They want her to do it, but the Nova Sicilia are the pizza mafia, and so she is sent to make a delivery because Uncle Enzo wants to talk to her. So after she has like delivered this pizza for Hero at the beginning of the book. So she goes to talk to Uncle Enzo, and the whole scene gives me the creeps a little bit. I think because YT has this tendency to evaluate like the attractiveness of all the older men that she meets and like contemplate what it would be like to sleep with them. It's really uncomfortable. And then the whole rest of this conversation, it feels very much like Mouse walked into the cat's trap, because it seems like Uncle Enzo knows things that she doesn't know, and he is kind of leading her through this conversation and making her like him and kind of making her care. And then afterwards, it turns out that they have a job they want her to do. So there's something weird happening with Uncle Enzo. He also gives her his dog tags. It turns out he's a Vietnam War vet, and he has his old dog tags, and he gives them to her and is like, if anybody's ever giving you trouble, show them these dog tags. and it's unclear why he's helping her, but the whole thing just feels very uncomfortable and icky. I really didn't like that. So that's everything that happens in this section. We meet Raven, we meet and then watch Lagos die, and then we meet Uncle Enzo officially and see YT kind of start this relationship with the mafia. And I still genuinely don't know where this plot is heading or what's going on here. I'm still very lost, and again, it feels very late for the plot to just now be kicking off when I'm this far into the book. Like this is everything I've read so far. I still have that much left, but like this is taking far too long to get started, and there's a lot that if I were like gonna edit this, there's a lot of stuff in here I would cut out that is just unnecessary. In particular, YT evaluating the attractiveness of every man that she meets is incredibly uncomfortable to read. She's 15. I really don't like it. It's really gross. Also, she keeps like judging other women, which I find very annoying, but is I guess a thing in 90s to early 2000s literature. I don't like it. I hate it. I've also, the number of times that I have felt the need to put like a little emoticon here. There's tons of these. They're peppered throughout the book. So I'm not having a great time. Let that focus figure its shit out. I'm not having a great time, but I am gonna go keep reading because I need to finish the rest of this. I don't know if I'm gonna get through it all today, but I am at least through the section that I need to lead discussion on, and I have some thoughts on it, so I have somewhere to start there. So like I'm in a comfortable place with this now. I'm not as worried about finishing the rest of it on time, but I am just gonna go ahead and read as much as I can so I can buy myself a little more time a little down the road, because I know I'm gonna have another big project to be working on. I just finished the next section of Snow Crash. This is section 4 that we're going to talk about, I think. I started adding some green tabs because I told the instructor I would flag some things that would make students uncomfortable in the second half because she had some requests for some trigger warnings. So I've made it difficult for myself to kind of quickly identify because I'm using green and blue. But anyway, I finished, I think it's section 4 that we're going to be talking about, and this is the most boring section yet. YT goes around doing a bunch of stuff with the mafia. That's kind of fun. And Hiro sits in his office getting a history lesson about religion and the Sumerians, and it just goes on for chapters and chapters, and it's so incredibly boring. That's pretty much all that's happened here. YT helped the mafia get a sample of Snow Crash, which nobody else has because it automatically disperses 10 seconds after being purchased. So they finally have a sample. Hiro is investigating some things with the connections to religion and the Sumerians because he keeps hearing about this from various people. And also we find out that his friend David, who saw Snow Crash in like saw like the bitmap for Snow Crash in one of the earliest chapters, now like 200 pages later we find out that he is in the hospital speaking in an incomprehensible language that nobody there can understand. It turns out it's probably Sumerian, and he seems to have been like his brain has been snow crashed. So that's kind of what's going on at this point, and this last chunk that I just read ends with YT throwing a award through her mother's computer because her mother is a programmer, and she just found out that like hackers are being, or programmers are being targeted, and sometimes their screen will just like crash and it will show them the bitmap, and then they get in the hospital for a while, and then they're taken away to a Bob Rice raft, and their blood is taken, and that is where Snow Crash comes from. So it is the blood of infected hackers. Very cool. By which I mean, not very cool at all. Actually quite stupid. And there's this whole like recurring thing that like religion is a virus, is like code, is like religion. It's very circular, and I think it's very silly. And also, did chapters of this really need to be an info dump on the history of religion? Also in a way that I don't think is accurate. But I'm down to the last 2 sections, which I am planning to read over my fall break, so I will be done with this book soon. I have finished the penultimate section of Snow Crash, so I've just got my last, like, longest chunk left. I think that last piece is like 150 pages. But I finished this next section where we're going to be talking about urban sprawl, I believe. And this continues the trend of being very boring, but we do have some action picking up right at the end of this section. So in this one, Hiro has some more info dump that he gets to experience, both from the librarian and from somebody named Chuck Wrightson, who is the like former president of one of the like country / franchises. I can't remember what it's called. Something called TROC, TROC. KK, I think. Anyway, former president was usurped and all of their stuff was taken over by Raven and his gang of Russian Orthodox gang members. Don't know why that's a thing. Not sure how I feel about that. But Raven kind of came in and took it over, and so that's why he has so many resources. And then Hero kind of finds that out. He realizes also that Juanita has gone to the raft, and so he starts heading that way to go and try and help her. Meanwhile, YT gets arrested by the feds and then kidnapped and sent to the raft as well. So she's there too. I don't really understand why she gets grabbed and taken to the raft. It's unclear what's going on there. But she's been kidnapped and taken to the raft. And then right at the end of the section, I think, is the most fun bit, where Hero tries to get a ship to go to the raft. And the person, he finds out that the ship that he wants has already got somebody on board. And when the person who he's trying to get the ship from is like, well, where are you trying to go? And Hero is like, well, I wanted to go get on the raft. The guy's like, well, why didn't you say so? That's where the other guy's going too. So Hero makes it onto the ship only to find out that it's the pizza mafia that has the ship. And we get to see him meet like the guy with the glass eye who YT has been interacting with, and we find out a little bit more about the mafia's role in all of this. And there's kind of an exciting bit where there's some explosions and things like that. So like, there's a fun bit there. That's about the only interesting piece of this whole section. But I did like the bit at the end with the mafia, and also there's this bit where the man with the glass eyes, but like basically we have a plan. It's a phased plan. So here's all the different phases, and then you get to the end and he like sees phase 4 actually go into action, and then the guy with the glass eye is like, now time for phase 5, a big fucking breakfast. And then they go eat and like have a meal together, and it's like kind of funny. So that's maybe the most interesting thing that happens here. We find out that the mafia is also somehow involved with Lagos and the kind of concern over the whole snow crash thing. So unclear exactly what their role is in it, but we know that they're tied to Lagos in some way. Basically everything that happens in this section, it's, again, there's not a whole lot going on. There's a lot of info dumping about like ancient Sumerian myth and things like that that just feels inaccurate. I don't know how much of it is actually like accurate to Sumerian myth. And there's also a lot of stuff about religion and viruses and language that is also just feels very inaccurate. And I'm again, not sure if anything here is accurate to reality. But that's pretty much all that happens in that section, and now I am about to dig into this last chunk, which will be the final piece. We're going to be talking about characterization in that section, and then I will finally be done and free of Snow Crash, other than needing to lead discussion on it. So I'm getting there, be done hopefully very soon. But yeah, at this point I would say I really can't recommend this book. I think it's really boring for a book that's 550 pages. I think it could have been fun if somebody had thought to like edit it down. I have finally finished Snow Crash. I'm finally free. This last section I will say had the most action in it. So there's the most like excitement in the last section, but I would still say this book is not very good and I would not recommend it. In the last bit we have Hero trying to get to the raft because he realizes Juanita is there and he's trying to help her, and he also wants to get to the raft to get a clay tablet that he thinks will give him the piece of Sumerian language that he needs to like break the virus's hold on people. And so he goes to the raft. YT also gets kidnapped and taken to the raft, and I had instant regret yesterday because I read the chunk I needed to read and then I started this section thinking like I'm making some progress, I'm just going to continue, and then this section starts with YT being on, just kind of being pulled around and put on a date with Raven. He's like 30, she's 15. It's very uncomfortable. There is a sex scene that is, you know, statutory rape, basically. And then Hero gets the thing that he needs because YT gets pulled onto a chopper, but she manages to kick the clay tablet out of the chopper. And then Juanita saves the day because Hero is basically useless. And they manage to break the virus's hold, and then there's this whole massive plot because we find out that like the mafia is involved, Mr. Lee of Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong is involved, and Ing of Ing Securities is involved, and they like put together a plan together to stop El Bob Rife once he reaches land, and that whole thing happens. Uncle Enzo goes full soldier mode. He's a Vietnam War vet, and so he's using his like knowledge gained from that to try and defeat Elba, Rife, and Raven once they're back on land. And yeah, it's very exciting in the very end, but I think it just leaves like a lot of stuff unanswered. First of all, YT and her relationship with Uncle Enzo is very weird, and it's unclear why he actually cares about her to begin with. I don't know why he's so worried about her all the time. Sorry for the angle change, my arm was starting to hurt, so we swapped. I don't know why Uncle Enzo cares about her. Also, we reached the end of the book and Raven is fine, but he kind of gets abandoned, and then Uncle Enzo may or may not live, we don't know. Hero is off doing things in the metaverse, I guess. He just kind of disappears. One-Eyed just kind of disappears, and the book ends with YT watching Elba Rife get absolutely annihilated by a rat thing, and then that's it. That's the end. Get my computer come back on so I have some light. Yeah, it's very nonsensical. I feel like this book is just weird and wild, and it doesn't really have like a cohesive plot. Oh, also there's a whole section where after you get like 200 pages of info dump where Hero is just being told things by the librarian, there's a whole like another set of chapters that are him regurgitating all of that information along with his own conjectures, which he's not presenting as fact, to Ing and Uncle Enzo and Mr. Lee. And like, you just get the whole set of information we've already gotten again, just regurgitated to some other characters. So this book is just so incredibly boring. I can't recommend it at all. It's a very weird experience, so if you want to just read something that's weird and stupid, like, I guess pick it up, but I really can't recommend this book in the slightest. I am glad I'm done with it. I need to lead discussion on it for not next week, but the week after, or not, I guess it is next week technically. Today is Monday, but I just had fall break, so I'm a little confused on what day it is. Anyway, I don't have to lead discussion this week, but next week, so I'll be preparing for that. But after that, I don't have to touch this book ever again. And I am going to keep it on my shelf as a hunting trophy, but that's it. I'm never reading this again, and I will never read anything else from Neil Stephenson. So that is basically my thoughts on the book. 1 star, it's terrible, but I have officially read it. I'm prepared to lead discussion on it, and that is a good thing. So I need to go work on that to start getting my materials together, and I've also got another project to work on. So I think I'm going to leave this video off here. I really hope that, although it's been a very negative video, I hope that you have enjoyed it. Maybe it was funny. I don't know. Fingers crossed you guys liked it. But if you did enjoy this video, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there is more content coming soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.